Hello, and thank you for joining us for the TA webinar, Video Creation for Textbook Authors and Instructors by Sasha Vodnik. Sasha is the author of several textbooks on computer programming for the web and teaches programming at General Assembly in San Francisco. Sasha has also written and recorded several video courses as an author for lynda.com. Hello, Sasha. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks so much for setting this up, and thanks everybody for joining us today. So, as Becky mentioned, I'm a textbook author and an instructor, and I've been building video courses. And once I started building video courses and seeing the sort of overlap, especially with textbook authoring, and as a sort of combination between textbook authoring and instructing, I started seeing the different ways that video could fit in with those other disciplines, and had actually done some of that myself. And so I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk with other instructors and authors about. So when I'm working with lynda.com, which you might also know as LinkedIn Learning, they give me access to this really high-end recording equipment. They have this whole post-production team that makes the video look good and the audio sound good, and they add graphics. And so that's not really what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about how to make basic videos. So the idea is that you can make your own basic videos and get them out there. And then, if you decide you want to kind of up your game and you want to make things a little bit higher quality, or there's specific pieces of that process that you want to make more professional looking, then you can kind of explore what that, how you might go about doing that. But for today, just want to help you get started with the basics. So first off, we're authors. We write and we illustrate. So why would we want to switch to a different medium? So there's a few basic areas here, a few basic things that motivated me and that I see as pushing video as a really important aspect of authoring going forward. One of those is this notion that students don't read. I am assuming that there's a number of folks on this webinar right now who are nodding their heads, who've heard this, that you assign a book and the students come back to class and you find out that nobody actually read it. Students just don't like to read in general, that students prefer what? They prefer going online, finding a YouTube video that explains the same material and watching that thing. So this whole idea that for students and for some people in particular, and I'll switch, exactly that some students' learning styles are more visual. So I think there's this aspect of today's students, of maybe a generational thing, and maybe the whole idea of digital natives, people having grown up with computers looking to that, but also that for some people in general, it's always been the case that listening rather than reading words works better for them to learn information. And so we get to take advantage of the fact that we have this modern technology that is in everyone's home and in most people's pockets these days, that can actually put together not just the material we want to teach, but an audio track with that and some movement, right? Some switching between slides, some talking through things, some maybe some graphics. And the other thing that I just love, this is kind of like my little bonus piece, is that as an author, I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but I've certainly experienced putting together a bunch of material, putting it into a textbook, and then finding out, oh, we have to cut a certain number of pages, or, oh, we got to move that to an appendix, and the appendix is only going to be available online. So with a video, especially a self-created video that I'm just sticking up on YouTube, I can be like, okay, well, I didn't have room to cover this in the book, but I can sure as heck put this up, link to it from my blog or from my Twitter feed. When I'm in contact with instructors who are using my books, I can actually let them know that this material exists. So it's a way for me to publish something without waiting for the publisher to decide, okay, yes, we can do that in print form, we can get that out for you. So when we think about videos, when you think about videos that you've seen, I have no doubt if I say think about a bad video you've seen on YouTube, you can immediately think about that one or that two and why you found it bad. And likewise, you might be able to sit and think about, what were some good instructional videos I've seen? What was good about them? So I'd like to give you all a minute to go over to the chat box on the webinar. So this is different than the question box. The chat box is at the very bottom, or it's the last of the sort of dark gray bars. And just spend a moment thinking about what made a good instructional video good, what makes it a bad instructional video bad, thinking specifically about videos you've seen. And if nothing immediately pops to mind, don't worry about it. But I just wanted to offer an opportunity for folks who have something immediately popping in their heads to just share with us what those videos have looked like. Because I certainly think that as I look at videos, and especially as I've started creating them myself, there's some sort of common themes and some pieces that float to the surface in terms of what turns me off. And I was actually happy to find that once I started working with LinkedIn Learning, with lynda.com on making videos, and they started sort of coaching me a little bit about, okay, here's what you should do, here's what you should avoid doing. And I'm like, right, because I've totally seen videos where they do that, and it just made me want to turn the thing off right away. So maybe things aren't popping in people's heads immediately, and that's totally fine. If something comes to mind and you want to throw it in there, that's fine. Otherwise, you can go to questions later on. So let me just share with you what I came up with for this. So the things that I think make a good video, and that in my experience really add to a video. First off, screen capture. So if you, especially for me as a programming instructor, I can go and sit down and just code an application and just show my screen while I'm doing it. Say, okay, I'm going to write this code, then I write this code, and then, let's see what happens. So showing what's going on the screen, when things are happening on the screen, whether it's building a Word document, putting together a data set, whatnot, like it really leverages video as a medium, right? It's showing not just an image, but showing a process, showing something happening. And likewise, slides, like what I'm doing right now. If you have a slide deck that you can move through, then that, again, is a really useful thing that takes advantage of video format. Now, when you get into slides, there's all these questions about how to effectively use PowerPoint. And that's kind of a different that's a different webinar. But in general, when you're doing slides for video, you want them to be mostly visual and not heavy on the bulleted list. So you notice here in the slide deck, I tried to practice what I preach and making sure I had a visual illustration for each of my slides that connected with what I'm talking about. I do have some bullets, but they're very short, and most of what is going on in this video is talking through these bullets rather than just trying to spell out exactly what I'm saying in a big nested bullet list. And so finally, the other thing that can go in a video is you. So there's a lot of videos out there that are just the screen. There's a lot of videos out there that are people in front of the camera talking. And so there's different points of view on this, but I think in general, if there's a reason for you to be on camera, then great. If you're Oprah and you go on camera, then you're going to get people's attention, right? So there's a reason. But likewise, if you're doing videos focused on your students, your face on their video might actually help them connect the material more with the class that they're in. There's also instances where, for instance, you're doing a demonstration. That's not just a screen capture. So I did a video for LinkedIn last year where I was trying to illustrate a point, and to do that we use this metaphor of pulling a tablecloth off a table and leaving the dishes in place. And so we actually did a live recording where they actually filmed me doing this and used that footage. So There's different takes on this, but in general, I think that you want to focus on leveraging the visual medium and showing illustrated material on the screen rather than just having you on camera talking, because then you're just really talking about a podcast, and then that's a totally different thing. So that's in general what I think makes for a good video. Now, what doesn't go in a video? And again, this image in particular, I found just really connected with my experience of, okay, I'm going to look for a video on this thing. I start playing it, and what happens is, well, I start up a video, and the announcer just drones and spends a bunch of time up front telling me what they're about to do. I've even got a bad video that I was looking at yesterday where this person is just like, there's so many bad videos out there on this topic. Why do people do that? And he's talking very slowly, and then he's just saying, they do this, and then they give you bad examples. Why do people, and it's like, I just want you to tell me the thing. And he's like, so in this video, I'm going to tell you I'll give you a really good example. And again, I'm thinking, like, just give me the good example. You don't have to tell me you're going to give me the good example. So first off, this whole idea of meta information. So the information about the video, I think, belongs in the text accompanying the video. So when you open up the page on YouTube that has your video in it, you're also going to have a little explanatory text there. So if a student sees the title of your video and goes to that page, they can read a little bit more, your like 2-sentence summary, to understand what your video is going to be doing, and then okay, they'll follow through with it if that sounds like what they're looking for. But I think really effective videos just dig right in at the beginning and don't start with more than a little bit of like, hey, I'm Sasha Vodnik, and today I'm going to tell you about creating videos for the web. I think that's about all you want in terms of meta information. So yeah, telling who you are, telling about the topic. So another thing that I think doesn't do really well in a video, again, is just a talking head. If you've just got somebody sitting there talking to the camera, especially when they don't even have a whiteboard or anything next to them, they're just kind of talking, that you're losing me there. I think it's maybe a stepping stone to move from there toward actually being able to add some visuals. But again, I think you are definitely filling the gap for students who are, or for your audience in general, who might do better listening to material rather than reading material. And so in that sense, you are actually adding some value. But I think that expecting somebody to just sit there and watch your face without you're losing the benefit of this other piece of the medium, which is that you can actually show an illustration. And so to whatever degree you can do that, I think is really extra useful. All of the images, for instance, so there's a lot of clip art on there, and it's not a great practice. And in fact, it's violating copyright to go out and just find an image on the web and yoink it into your proposal, into your slide deck, and then publish that on YouTube. But there are an increasing number of sites, like the one I used for this presentation. It's called pexels.com, Pexels.com, where they have free, it's not clip art, it's images that anyone is allowed to use. And so, their whole business model is that they give you a few ones for free, but then they'll also show you a bunch of search results that are not free. And so if you're like, well, those are good, but that's really the one I want, then it's like, okay, well, you're willing to pay a certain amount of money for that. But I find I get a lot of mileage out of their free ones. I haven't actually paid for any there yet. So getting some illustrations in there with that talking head, I think, is really important. And then just in general, anything that's not useful for illustrating your point can just be cleaned out of there. Just making those videos really focused so that you are talking about and conveying the information that the user, that the audience is there to see, and not going off in other directions that aren't relevant. And so that brings us to the question of how tight do we need to make this? How long should a video be? So the rule that I've been taught at LinkedIn is 5 minutes or less. And that translates to about 700 to 800 words. And it really depends on your rhythm, how fast you speak, and how fast you speak while you're presenting as opposed to when you're not, because those nerves can definitely, if you have nerves when you're presenting, it can change your rhythm. It can make you speak more quickly, or it can make you stumble over your words and go more slowly. So I think it can be useful to actually write up a script and just time yourself. Count the number of words, get a certain number of word count, go ahead and time yourself and see how long it takes you to read. So you can get a sense for you of how many words work out to that 5-minute point. So for some people, I had a good discussion. I presented this at the TAA conference last year, and I had a good discussion with someone afterwards who felt like, doing a longer 8 to 10 minute video on certain topics was actually useful. You really couldn't get into things in 5 minutes. And so, this is something that works in certain domains. I do videos again on computer programming. And so for me, my rule is that if I have a topic that takes more than 5 minutes, then I just break it up into multiple videos. So if I have something that is going to 8 minutes, then I got to figure out, okay, how can I break this into 2 subtopics and make one video that's the first part, another video that's the second part. Each one of those videos kind of being a self-contained idea, but that can be watched sequentially to get all of this information across that I want to convey. And for me, the other place that this 5-minute rule comes in for me is, as an instructor, I've been teaching for a couple of years, and at first I was giving students after each class just a list of a few links online they could go to and read more about the topic. And I had some feedback from students saying, hey, I'd really like some videos rather than having to read. So again, that whole idea that there's students who would really prefer to have the video, the information conveyed by video. And so I went through and was starting to search for videos for each of the topics that I cover in my course, and found myself looking at a video and really just looking at the timeline and realizing, okay, this is 12 minutes long. I don't expect anybody to sit down for this one little topic that they're trying to learn a little bit more about here. This isn't realistic. And so I actually found myself looking for videos that were 5 minutes or so. So in terms of preparation, when I first started building out video courses for LinkedIn Learning, I was really pleasantly surprised to find that the preparation is a lot like writing a short article or writing a section of a textbook chapter. That I really had to start by identifying a goal. What am I really trying to convey here? And then I needed to outline my content. So creating an outline just like I would for a textbook. Obviously, with the end goal in mind, the chapter length the topic length is pretty prescribed, but that some of you have written for formats where that's the case. We're given a word count, or we're given a specific format into which our chapter organization should fit. And once you've got those things in mind, just like with a textbook, then you write a script. So actually fleshing out that content. And then for each one of those topic areas, if that script is too long, you need to break it up. So again, understanding your word count, the word count that hits about 5 minutes for you, and then doing some word count, which you can do in any of the authoring writing tools these days, even Microsoft Word, Google Docs, they all let you select text and do a word count on it to understand where you are, and you can translate that into your own timing. And so once you've got your script broken up, if necessary, once you've got your script for this specific video that you're creating, then actually creating a slide deck or whatever else you want to show in your video. Now, I've had also heard some advice, some people who say that you should start with the visual piece. And so that may be another avenue to explore, to actually identify your goal, outline your content, but before you write the script, to actually create that slide deck, and then write the script that goes with the slide deck. You may also find that as a presenter, you do better just from that outline, and then a script isn't necessarily going to help you. So again, this is all tweakable based on what makes most sense for you. I tend to like having a script that I can refer to, so that if I start thinking too much while I'm presenting, I have something to refer back to. But there's a lot of people who prefer to do a more lecture style, conversational style where they're just kind of going off their notes. They know the topic inside and out. They know sort of the general parameters in which they're trying to present, and they go with that. So again, just making sure that if you are the type of person who tends to ramble, you have a way of reining yourself in and making sure that you're not going way outside the lines on that. Now, the other thing is that you want to do some practice. So just sitting down, hitting record, and expecting yourself to deliver a perfect video the first time, that's not really realistic. I mean, sure, it may happen, but I would really recommend planning to do some practice. For me, that's often just sitting down with nothing recording and just sitting down my script and reading through it. Because I find that the act of reading something out loud changes the way I perceive it, and I actually notice things when I'm reading out loud where I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds fine when I'm reading it on the page, but when I read it out loud, it sounds totally weird, and so I want to change the way that's written. And I can also read through something and find that just when I'm reading it out loud, I realize, oh, I need to add more of a transition here, or I need to explain that piece a little bit more. I just need to jump there. So going through that and then just doing some practice, reading through, and sometimes I find that there's a word that I've used that's in the sentence or in the clause that I've written, it's just hard to say. And so maybe just rewording things to make everything flow better out of my mouth, that's a really useful practice for me too. So once I've gotten some practice, once I've kind of fine-tuned that script or that outline, then I'm ready to actually do some recording. And so in terms of equipment, the next step, do we need to buy a bunch of expensive equipment, maybe rent a studio? Fortunately, the answer is no. We do not need to do any of that. So the cool thing is that all you need is a modern computer. So either Windows 10 or a recent version of Mac OS, both of these have built-in software that let you do a basic screen capture and audio capture and then publish that video to the web. So the only other piece you need in terms of equipment is a quiet place. So even if you had a special microphone that was meant to filter out background noise or focus in on what's right in front of it, you still need to minimize or eliminate the background noise. So since we're going to be using just the commodity microphones that are built into our computers, like I'm doing right now, so using those, they're meant to try, they're doing their best at filtering out unimportant noise, but it is more important with those than, since I'm not using high-tech equipment, then I do need to minimize that background noise. And so, we don't want any other noises that are distracting our users or making us hard to hear. We want to make this as clear as possible. So just that little thing, I think, is an important step in making this all work. And so I want to go ahead and just walk through doing this. So I'm doing this on a Mac right now, and I also have an installation of Windows running as a virtual machine. But unfortunately, what I found is that the Windows recording is a little bit quirky, and on my machine, it's telling me that it just won't work. I've had it working on there before, and now it suddenly decided that it's not going to work for me again. But I want to at least show you the basics of how both of these things work on both of these systems. So let me actually start by just showing you Windows, and I'll just show you the basics of how things can work on Windows. I also want to point out that in the GoToWebinar control panel that you have open, there's a link in the handout section. It's a PDF called videocreation.pdf. That's a 5-pager that includes the steps for both Mac and Windows, along with some additional resources. So I encourage you to download that, and if you want to try out these steps at a later time, then feel free to use that handout to do that. And so in Windows, Windows has this, Windows 10 has this interesting feature built in called the game bar. And so the idea is that this is, Microsoft, in addition to making Windows, they make the Xbox, which is a gaming system. And these days, gamers like to record what they're doing on the screen and share it, either live broadcasting or posting a video of them, hitting some milestone or doing something really unusual in the game. And so Windows now has built in the ability to capture the video from a game you're playing. But the thing is, Windows doesn't know by default what app is a game and what isn't. And the game bar works in whatever app you tell it to game. And so you can open up the game bar and say, yeah, this is a game in Microsoft Word, for instance. So I'm saying, okay, if I'm showing you how to create a resume in Microsoft Word. So I go into Windows and I can hit the the Windows key and G. And this, so if you don't have, I already set this up in it previously. If you don't have it set up yet, you're going to get a little box opening that asks you whether you want to use the game bar. You can just check a little box that says, yes, this is a game. So the game bar has also changed a little bit, you'll notice, since my handout, but all the buttons that I show on the handout are on the game bar as well. And they've actually made the appearance of the game bar easier to navigate and easier to use, to my eyes. So you have this icon here, which toggles between the microphone being on or off. And so if you want to just record a screen capture with your own voiceover, you want to make sure that the slash is not through the microphone, so that the microphone is on, and the button says if you click it, it's going to turn it off. So they have this broadcast where you can live broadcast, but we're more interested in this start recording button, which is just going to start recording whatever we do on the screen. You've also got a button over here, let's take a screenshot. And this is really cool. This is basically, Windows is buffering the last 30 seconds of what you did and can just capture that retrospectively. So if I click start recording, it's going to tell me, oh, your computer actually doesn't meet the hardware requirements. This seems to be a common issue, because my computer certainly does meet the hardware requirements, so I'm not sure what's up there. But anyway, when you do that, you click the recording and it'll put a stop button on the screen. So you just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. You can just kind of talk your way through, either a slide deck, or in this case, I was talking about building out a resume or something, so I can type things in my Word document. Then when I'm done, hit that stop button, and it's going to take me to back to the game bar. There is a default location where it saves your videos, and then you can actually open that up and edit that, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's the basics of Windows. And again, I'm sorry I can't totally show you everything about how that works. But what I am going to do is show you on the Mac end of things how things work. And there's some overlap there. So on the Mac, what I want to do is open up QuickTime. And so QuickTime is an application that's a video viewer, but it also happens to have screen recording capabilities built into it. So I'm going to do Command Spacebar and QuickTime, and QuickTime Player is what I want. So I'm going to open up my QuickTime Player, and what it does is, you notice in the top left, we got QuickTime Player open, but all we've got is this window. It's basically saying, oh, you probably want to open a file, so what file should I open? But I don't need to open a file, so I'm just going to say done. And so I've got QuickTime Player open. And so what I want to do is set up my screen exactly the way I want it to be for recording. And so again, let's say I'm going to open up Word, and dealing with two screens here, so give me a sec. There we go. Okay, so I've got Word. I probably want to full screen this. Actually, I'm just going to keep it in a full screen window like that. I'm going to switch back to QuickTime. And so now I want to get my screen set up the way I want it, and I want to have QuickTime Player in place. And in QuickTime, I can go File, and I can choose New Screen Recording. So we can record a movie out of your camera. You can just do audio out of your microphone, or you can actually record the screen. And so when I do this, I get this little box pop up. And so this is the basic controls. And this is the record button. But before I hit the record button, I want to hit this little arrow next to it. Yes, I do want to record from the microphone, so I'm going to switch over to the internal microphone. And now I can see that when I talk, excuse me, we've got some audio bars showing up indicating that it is actually hearing me in the microphone. And by default, show mouse clicks is not, excuse me, show mouse clicks is not selected, but I want to make sure that's selected for me. You may choose differently, but since I am actually walking through a process on the screen, I want to show when I'm clicking the mouse, and so it actually has this kind of visual illustration to show when I've clicked. But if you were just going through, say, a slideshow, that's not going to be as important. Whoops. And so I'm going to hit the record button, and I get this little message, where basically if I click right now, it's going to record the whole screen. If I didn't have a full screen window up, I could actually drag from one corner to another, select the part of the screen I wanted to record. And also notice that we've got the stop button up here now in the menu bar, and it's telling me that I could end the recording at any point by just going up there and clicking that. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and now I'm recording. We've got that I don't know if you can see my menu bar, but it's, yes, I think you can. So it's got this stop button up here now. And so I can say, okay, how you create a resume in Word? Well, the first thing you do is you put your name at the top. Okay, so just as an illustration, I'm going to go ahead and click stop. And so now, QuickTime, and this is the part that gets confusing because you've just done a screen capture. Now you're looking at a still frame from a video of your screen capture, and it's really easy to get confused about, you know, we're kind of in Inception land here about which one is real and which one is the frame within the frame. There's, as an aside, as a tech person, I've heard about something that people do sometimes as a practical joke, where you take a screen capture of the whole screen, and then you set it as the background of somebody's desktop, and you move all their icons into a folder somewhere so that they click on the icon and nothing happens because of the screen capture. So anyway, Inception land, yes. So when I move the mouse over this video, the video controls show up, and so I can go down and just play it. I'm recording. I've got that I don't know if you can see my menu. And so I've got my recording, it's in place, and I can make, and I've made sure that the sound works. So what I find is often useful, and I've skipped over this at my own peril sometimes, is that you start by making a 10 or 15 second snippet of your video. Then you stop and you play it back just to make sure, okay, the audio did record. I actually can see the mouse moving around on the screen. Because if you record a 5-minute video or a few 5-minute videos, and then you play one back and realize, hey, wait a minute, my microphone was turned off, or there's something in front of my microphone, or this isn't capturing the right area of the screen, you just wasted a whole bunch of time and effort. So I highly recommend doing a little test like this first. And so once you've got this footage, and this applies both in Mac and in Windows, once you've got some footage, you can actually do a limited amount of editing with the tools that are built in. And so in QuickTime, if we go up to Edit, and again, I want to make sure I'm on that Edit menu on the real menu bar and not in the video itself. So we have an option called Trim. And so this pops up this really useful little tool where at the bottom here, we've got a yellow box surrounding a bunch of still frames from this video. This red line is showing me where in the video I'm at right now. And I can actually drag that back and forth where I can see, you know, the mouse moves back and forth like I was moving my mouse as I'm doing it. And so I can say, you know, right here where I got the mouse out of the window, that's where I want to really start the video. So I can just drag this little bar, this little handle, to that point in the video. And now if I hit play, I don't know if you can see my menu bar, but it's, and likewise, I can drag this playhead to the end where I just, okay, here's where I got the typing done, and I don't need anything else after that. So then I can, again, drag this handle, and we've got this little barely visible white line here. I think this might be because I'm doing a, oh no, that's not actually what I think it is. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my menu bar, but right, and so okay, here's the thing. If I drag this handle, as I drag back, it shows me on the screen where I'm dragging to. And so now I've got to the point where I've just typed that first line. And so now I can just replay my whole video to test it out. So when I'm done, you can trim one end or the other or both. I just hit the trim button over here. And now my video is only 13 seconds instead of 16 seconds. And it's got those parts lopped off. So that's a good first step, especially, you know, I often find there's a little bit of setup. You're kind of like getting everything moving, you're full screening and then getting everything started, and then you move things around, and then a couple seconds later you're all ready. So you can just lop that part right off. At the very end, maybe there's a loud sound where you're kind of hitting the stop button, so you can easily lop that part off as well. So this isn't really useful for cutting out parts in the middle, and that's a more complex piece where you may actually need to just chop your video into multiple pieces. That's a little bit more of a video editing process. So I think we're just getting started. You just want to try and get one good take where you can cut off the beginning and the end if you need to, but the rest of it should be pretty solid. If you have a little bit of stumbling over your words here or there, it's not the end of the world, especially for your first video or two. And then finally, what we need to do is save it. And again, making sure we're hitting the file button up here. You can always hit save and then just decide call it resume step 1. And then it gets saved. You can see now the file name is up here. And so that's the basics with QuickTime. So the other thing that we can do with a basic video like this, it's just a screen capture and an outline, is actually publish it straight to the web. And so in macOS, I can click File, and there's always a share option in every app. And so notice that, you know, you can email this or send it as a message and all these things, but we've also got Vimeo and Flickr, which is an image sharing, and YouTube. So Vimeo and YouTube are probably the two places that are most popular for sharing. And so I can click one of these, and it's going to send me through a series of steps. And so the first thing is obviously going to be signing in with an account, a Google account for YouTube. And then it's just going to walk you through actually publishing this, giving it a name, and you're going to end up with the video uploaded straight to your YouTube account, and you'll have a link for it. I'm not going to walk through this right now, but I'm just going to cancel that. But that is a really straightforward process. And so over on the Windows end of things, we also have a way to share videos as well as to edit videos. And so Windows has this app called Movies and TV. And so I can actually open up a file in here. They're doing so much with these apps these days that they change the interface all the time. But what I can do is, generally what I want to do is from my file explorer, I want to go to, oh mercy, I did not actually make this file available myself. Okay, because what I can do is right click a file, and then I can say open with, And for a video, I can actually select that Movies and TV app. So let me grab that file and make it available to my Windows machine. Apologies for the oversight on this one. So this is for video creation, and I have a video to edit. So I'm going to copy that over here, and let's see if I can just paste that right into my Windows desktop. There we go. Okay, so I have a video to edit. And so what I'm going to do is right-click that, and I'm going to say Open With, and it's going to give me Movies and TV as an option. And so this is actually just a screen capture of me recording.
So what goes in a video?
The presentation I'm doing right now. And so one thing I also want to note is that you'll notice that the file name is Video to Edit Windows, because Windows and Mac both use different file formats. And they export their videos in different file formats. And so on Windows, it's an MP4 file, which is pretty much the global standard. On Mac, it's a movie file, .mov. And that's something that pretty much only Mac uses. The thing is that as long as you're using the software built into these operating systems, you're going to go through this process of exporting it to YouTube or to wherever, and that's going to take care of converting it to the format that everybody can use to see it online. So you don't really have to worry about that format, but you do have to know that if you create a video on one system, especially if you create a video on a Mac and try and edit it on a Windows machine, it's not guaranteed to go very well. And so one of the cool things that you can do on Windows that you can't do on Mac is you can actually do some editing with these built-in tools. And so you've got this Edit in Photos button with this little pen. And if I click that, it gives me some options. So it's basically going to open this in another app called Photos, and it's going to allow me to do a few different things. We notice it has a trim feature, just like the one we saw earlier on the Mac side of things. It also is going to let me draw. And so let's start with the drawing. And so let's try that again. Okay, well that seems to be failing for me today, unfortunately, because it thinks that this file is already open in Photos, and it's not. Okay, so now we have Photos. Okay, so the draw feature for whatever reason wasn't working for me, but here I have it open with the trim feature. And so this is very similar to the one on the Mac, but it uses this blue ball to show you the playhead. And then you can simply drag these white caps on the ends of a line to wherever you want the video to be trimmed at the beginning and the end. And so notice again, as I drag, it's showing me the video at that point. So I can take it all the way to the end of, maybe I want to just cut off that last bullet. And then when I'm dragging here, it's showing me the video at that point as well. So here's where I got my screen all set up. And then we've just got the Save As button up here. What we're going to do is Save As. It's giving me a default location, which is the Pictures folder. And it appends the words, the underscore and the word trim at the end, just to indicate this is the trimmed version of this video. I'm actually going to go ahead and stick that on the desktop just to make it easier for me to find. And then it goes through this little process of actually exporting that video, the saved version of that video. When this is done exporting, I'll try one more time to do the, well, actually it's 10:45 and I want to leave some time for some questions. So I'm actually going to spend the last couple minutes just going over other tools. This is just the basics. You can see you can trim in both of these pieces of software, and there are actually options that are outlined in the handout, that PDF that's available in the chat window, to actually go through and mark. You can write words, you can draw arrows or circles really easily in Windows. So there are some other resources available if you've decided that, hey, I want to keep doing this and I can't do what I want to do using just the features that are built into my computer. So there's a few other options. So one of those you may have heard of before is called Camtasia. And so this, I have Camtasia software open. I have an older version. I don't know. Most everybody switched over to a subscription model these days, and I think Camtasia has as well. This is an older version that was just to kind of buy it once. The cool thing about Camtasia, so it has all these features. I can open a video in here, and I can add some transitions. I can also, so there's transitions. There's also, you can tweak the video, and you can also annotate, and that's what a lot of people use this for, where you can actually add text to the screen, you can add some shapes to the screen, you can circle things, and it will put it on this timeline such that it's there for a certain number of seconds, and you can drag or shrink the amount of time it's on the screen, so you can control how long that circle's there before you move on to the next thing. So that can be really useful. This also gives you some features where you can actually crop out pieces of the video if you feel like they just need to be edited out, you need to move on, and then you can easily transition from one section to another. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it can make your videos a little more polished. And so the thing that's cool about, another thing that's cool about Camtasia is that there are some, depending on, if you're working for a university, for a college, for school, they may actually have a site license for Camtasia so that they pay a flat fee, and that everybody who works there at the institution can use the software for free. So that's definitely worth checking out. You may also have people in your department who know the software and who'd be happy to kind of show you around it. And so that can be a really useful way to just kind of get take a step forward up in your game once you've made a video or two. There's also a website called Screencast-O-Matic, and I need to open up my browser here. So Screencast-O-Matic offers a lot of the same features as Camtasia, but they actually are a subscription model, and they have a free tier. So we look at the plans here, and so there is actually a free tier over here in the middle of the screen where you can do some basic things. They'll let you add captions and trim a lot of the stuff that you can do with the built-in software. You can publish to YouTube and share with a few other places. But a lot of these other things, like actually drawing, zooming in, they don't let you do on a free plan. But they have this deluxe plan that's only $1.50 a month. So again, your institution may have a site license for this, but if they don't, $1.50 a month, it's not going to break the bank. And so you can get more advanced features here. They let you record longer than 15 minutes, and you can decide whether you even want to do that. But really, the drawing is really useful. They also have these video editing tools where and they even have their own music you can add in. So there's some extra features that can be really useful with Screencast-O-Matic. And so again, if you don't have that Camtasia subscription, you don't want to pony up the money for that, Screencast-O-Matic is a really useful way to, again, try out some of those more advanced features. And the links for both of those are on that handout, that PDF and video creation. So I think at this point, I want to make sure we have some time for questions. And so I'm going to throw things back to Becky to handle that.
All right. Thank you, Sasha, for that excellent information. We do have some time for questions, so please type your question into the question box on your screen, and I will be sharing your questions in the order that they are received. We do have a handful of questions already that have been in here, so some of you may have already answered. So we'll just go right in order. So the first one is, what was the website for the free art again?
Yes, and that's on the screen right now, pexas.com. There's another one. Actually, there's a few of these. It's one of those things where I make a note and then I see another one and I make a note and then I have to find. Let me see if I can find the URL for the other one, because there's a couple of these.
All right. I'll just read the next question while you're looking, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any software to recommend to record and edit the video? I think you probably already went over that.
So yeah, so so for recording, again, using QuickTime on a Mac. It's called QuickTime Player, but it actually does the recording. Or on Windows using the game bar. And again, if you download that PDF that's in the chat right here, and I think that's going to be available on the website for the TAA as well, that will walk you through actually getting these tools started and setting them up.
Okay, perfect. And yes, it will be available with the recording after today. And it is for anybody who is still listening. If you're not able to see it, it's under the handouts tab. You can download it right from there. Okay, I'm going to read the next question to you. Do you have any recommendations for disability accessibility, such as closed captions?
It's a great question. So YouTube has a feature that you can turn on where they will automatically generate captions for your video. I haven't used it myself, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't think it's a paid feature. So there's also, so that's one way, and Google's voice recognition has gotten pretty good, but it's not perfect. Especially if you're moving between different languages or you're using terms that are not very common, they might get the caption wrong. And so there's also a process that you can, so the free tools aren't going to do this for you, but Screencast-O-Matic and Camtasia will both actually let you add captions to your video. And so that may be nothing more than, some people just start out with the script that they've already typed up, just break that up, but you have to, if you have a grad student, this might be a good project for them, but it's really one of these processes where you have to take a sentence or a clause, stick it on the screen, figure out where it goes in the timeline and how long it should go on the screen, and then next, then the next one goes up. So it's a little bit of a labor-intensive process, but that gets you the exact captioning.
Great. Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you again to Sasha for sharing your expertise with us. And to everybody else, if you've missed any of TAA's past webinars, you can watch them in the library of presentations on demand on our website. You can find the link under the resources tab. You can view all of the webinars online at taaonline.net/webinars. And there is also the list for all of the spring webinars there as well. Again, thank you, Sasha, for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you for participating in the presentation.
Thanks so much, Becky. And if anybody's still here, the other website is unsplash.com. That's unsplash.com.
Thank you. And I just want to make one more comment. So the handout for this recording, there is on the control panel that is on your screen for the webinar right now. There is a section that says handouts, and you would just click that bar there. And you'll see the video creation PDF right there. You can download it right from there. It will also be available in when we send out the email that this webinar, we are recording it, we are going to post it on our website. We will have the handout there as well. So for the people who are asking where that is, I know it's a little bit difficult to find on the control panel, but you can get it. If you still are having issues, just send me an email and I can get it to you as well. So I just want to make sure that everybody has that. All right. Well, thank you again, Sasha, and thank you everybody for participating.
Thanks so much, Becky.